I'm Yisrael Chai. Friends, it has been a very much a roller coaster week. I know we've seen uh, moments, well, I don't know about all of you, but lots of tears. Tears of joy when we've seen families reunited, tears of pain as the bodies of our dead Lifshitz and the Bibas families came back to Israel. It has been an incredibly difficult time. And the cynicism and depravity of the way that Hamas have acted throughout these last 16 months, and indeed in the release of those bodies, is shocking, even when we thought we couldn't be further shocked. Our dead Lifshitz was an angel of peace who used to work to take Palestinians to hospital, and the Bibas family, their images, I think, and their names forever entwined with us, our collective soul as a Jewish people. The tragedy is unspeakable. And in the midst of all of that, we've seen a real failure, a failure by the BBC. I think many of us would have been surprised that editorial standards could have fallen any lower over these last 60 months, but yet they have. The BBC have had to pull a documentary because they hadn't realised that it had been narrated by the son of a Hamas. I think they're now putting it back up with that really shocking line that's going to be, I think, running across it. We've seen tweets deleted that took Hamas lines wholesale about a mix-up of the casket of Shiri Bibas. It defies belief, and there have been even more incidents, I think, over the last 24 hours. The BBC absolutely needs to clean its act up. It's unacceptable what we're seeing. And I think it begins, as we know, with the fact that they continue to have this false equivalence between Israel, a democratic nation, and Hamas, a terrorist organization, so designated not just by this country on a cross-party basis, but many of the countries across the world. And we continue to call for Hamas to be properly called by the BBC a terrorist organization. That's where it begins. But I think we now need to see an independent external inquiry that will absolutely look into why this keeps happening. What's wrong with the culture? Is it individuals? Is it a culture? Both need to change in our book, and that's something that we're going to be following up over the coming days and weeks. Friends, over the last month, the board has been working really hard to build on the empowerment that we've spoken about. And I wanted to thank all of you who came to the board's Parliamentary Advocacy Day, a first for us. 25 people came. I think it was a really wonderful day, and we saw basically immediate results. The issues we were talking about being raised on the floor of the Commons, letters going into ministers. We're looking to build that up further over the coming months and years. We've received a grant to train deputies to do that advocacy to politicians, to media, and so on. We're going to be rolling that program out over the coming weeks and months. Also, the amazing crowd fund. And I just want to say a huge thank you to, I think it was 83 of you who came forward to participate in that. Not only did we smash our targets in terms of the financial income, which was really important, and we've got a very happy treasurer on the screen over there, but we also have done a couple of other things which I think are really significant. First of all, the fact that over 1,000 people donated to us is really important in terms of building out our support base, and so many others, because of your good work, saw the story of what the board is doing, and I think really gets the message out there about the important work that we're all doing together. Furthermore, I think that it shows the way that we can work together, all of us pulling together, all of us bringing forward our talents, our abilities to make this organisation work even better. So I really want to thank everybody who's been involved in that. That work of empowering our deputies continues, and it's really showing results. And later today, of course, we're going to have the open forum. It's become a feature, an opportunity to check in at this moment of transition in international relations. We know that we're coming to the end of the phase one of the current hostage ceasefire deal. We are, since the last plenary, in the world of the new Trump administration, and that has its bumps and challenges as well. And we want to hear your reflections on that to guide us in our work. So we're looking forward to hearing your views on that later. Last thing for me is to come to the announcements. Some mazel tovs to past President Vivian Wyman on his 75th birthday. Looking good for it, Mr. Past President. To Deputy Deborah Cohen and Neil Nerva on the birth of a grandson. To their daughter Harriet and son-in-law Zach Estelle, friends of mine. And a great nephew to the Senior Vice President Adrian Cohen, past President Marie van der Zyl, and another cousin to Deputies Margaret Abrahams and Francis Nyman. We've really, kind of the Cohen family, has really filled out the deputies, and that's wonderful as well. Mazal tov to all of you. To Deputy Linda Sharp and her husband Donald on their 60th wedding anniversary on the 2nd of March. Wonderful. Mazel tov. To Rob Sassoon, Chair of the Under-35 Assembly, for making it to the only Connect final. I think we've all been quelling about that. Also to Rob and Richard Sassoon, Jonathan Brodie and Harriet Lampert for their hat-trick win at the annual Wheatso Pub Quiz. Lots of talent in depth in our deputies, so thank you very much. I want to wish a refuah shalema to Anne Cooper, who's the mother of Deputy Richard Cooper, Toiba Hinder Basfegela, who is unwell, and we pray for her full and speedy recovery. And then condolences to past President Vivian Wyman on the loss of his brother Bernard. Our thoughts are with you, Chaim Arukim. And with that, I hand over to the independent chair, Karen, to take us through the meeting.
Thank you very much, Phil. A very warm welcome to everybody this morning. Just before we get underway, a few housekeeping rules. I would remind you, though, I hope there is no need to ask you to be polite and to not say anything slanderous. I'm sure you wouldn't dream of it. The meeting is not being live streamed, but it is being recorded, and we hope to have it available on Monday. I believe that we do have members of the press on the call. I would like you to bear that in mind when you make your interventions. I see that some of you have things like Ben Phone and other names on your screens now that do not include your full names. I would ask you to do that because we do have a vote now on a membership issue. So I need you to ask you to put your name on the Zoom to identify yourself so that we don't have any iPad 3 and it's clear who you all are. I would also ask if you're an under 35 observer, please put U35 before your name because that makes it much easier for us to manage the vote effectively. I will, as I always try to do, encourage first-time speakers, and so would ask those of you who speak regularly to be as self-disciplined as you possibly can. And I would call to your attention the accessibility guidelines, which you've all had, whereby we ask you to pay some attention to the way that you look on screen so that people who need to lip read can clearly see what you're saying. And that does involve not putting your hand in front of your mouth and doing other things that make that a bit more difficult. Okay, that's enough from me on that. So with that, may I invite you to have a look at the minutes of our last meeting. You've all had those available to you in your packs. And so I would like to seek your approval for the minutes of the meeting that we held on January the 19th, either online or at the Camden Town Hall. Are there any comments on those minutes? I see no comments. So I'm going to ask, is it okay to approve those minutes of our meeting? Yes, I'm seeing some hands there. So those minutes are so approved. Thank you very much. We've also had all of our honorary officers' reports. So I'm going to take questions now to the President and to the honorary officers. The clock will be set. It will be set for 1 minute. I'm going to be as strict as I can to have as many questions as possible. And I would ask you, as you speak, if you could direct your questions to a particular honorary officer. So I've got Glynis and then Philip and then Robert and then Susan. So Glynis, the floor is yours.
My question is to...
Sorry, I do need you to say your name and your constituency.
Sorry, Glynis Cusack, Stanmore, Cannons Park, Synagogue. Apologies. My question is just to Andrew Gilbert, please. I've seen the Daily Mail on February the 15th did a 2-page report that was really quite shocking, headed "Are Jews Safe in NHS Hospitals?" I'm just going to read the beginning bit because it's too much for the time. It's a shocking question to ask, but as doctors, nurses and dentists praise Hamas and spread vile anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, it's no wonder that many patients are now hiding their identity when seeking treatment. And I just wonder whether Board of Deputies can refer to West Streeting or other people to this. This is really shocking.
Yeah, can I come back? Is that okay?
I was going to take about four questions
Sure.
and then ask people if that's all right, Andrew, because
Sure.
then if more come to you, you could handle them at the same time. Philip and then Robert. Philip Goldenberg, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Question to the President.
I need
This
you to say who
relates-
you are, Phil, and your
Sorry,
constituency.
Philip Goldenberg, Northwest Surrey Synagogue. Question to the President. And this relates to the board inviting and therefore giving credence to the Reverend Haley Ace, who is a Christian Zionist. Is the President aware that the fundamental belief of Christian Zionists is to encourage Jews to go to the land of Israel as a prelude to the second coming of Jesus of Nazareth and the subsequent conversion of Jews to Christianity? Does this appear as an objective in the board's 5-year plan? I doubt it. Chairman, could I invite you to take an indicative vote on this on the views of deputies? Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Robert and then Susan, and then I will revert to the honour officers.
Unmute. There we are. Thanks. Robert Stone, Finchley Reformed Synagogue. My question, question 10 in the list, asked whether the members of the International Division had been consulted before the board issued its statement on the 5th of February following Trump's outrageous proposal to create a Riviera. The answer was that the demands of engagement with modern media are such that consultation wasn't possible. In other words, the people we elected on International Division couldn't be consulted because there wasn't time. That statement by the Board of Deputies was made before the British government had made its position clear. The next day, Annalise Dodds, the minister in the development, said that the government will oppose any efforts to move Palestinians against their will. We didn't say that. I'd like to ask the chair of International Division why we rushed to make a statement before the United Kingdom made a different opinion clear the next day.
Thank you very much, Robert. So I'm going to go to Andrew first, and then Adrian, and then Phil.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Glenys, for the question. First, we had a meeting back in December with Wes Streeting, and we went through. He was very positive, and I've gone back to him now 3 times, chatted with him, and he said, "Look, give us time. We're working on it, and we're not happy." We've gone back to his special span on it. We've also written to the Amanda Pritchard, the lead of the head of the NHS, and said, "Actually, we need a meeting with you." We're now pursuing it, such as Homerton Hospital and other places, directly with the regional ICBs. So we're working, I think, on 3 different prongs. One, you're right, this isn't acceptable. We're going to the minister. We're going to go deeper into the ministry as well. We're going to go have a go nationally at the NHS, and we're also going to go for what are called the local integrated care systems and the hospital trusts. So every level where a deputy locally can help us on their local ICB, ICS, come and talk to me, and let's actually take this up locally in your areas with their regional health structures, and let's do this together. Thank you very much, Glenys.
Thank you, Adrian, and then Phil.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Sorry, Karen, do you mind just saying Robert's question again? I couldn't quite catch it.
It was about the board statement and what the timing of it, because it came out before the British government statement.
The statement, which statement? The statement about, sorry, Robert, do you mind repeating it?
Robert, do you want to do that? Can you give the floor to Robert Stone? Robert, you're on mute. Good.
Right, I'm off mute now. My point was that you made a statement on the 5th of February about Trump's proposal for Gaza, which did not condemn the proposal to remove Palestinians. The day before the government announced that it would wholly oppose the removal of Palestinians. My question was, why didn't you consult the elected members of International Division? The reply was that the demands of engagement with modern media meant that we couldn't wait. Well, that meant that the board made a bland position on Trump before the British government had strongly opposed Trump's position. So we were out of line with the British government because of what? The demands of social media, really. I do not think that is acceptable.
Okay, Robert, thank you. Adrian, is that enough for you to go on?
Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. Thank you, Robert. As with all, there's a standing protocol with regard to all statements that are made by the Board of Deputies, which is which is that they are discussed and considered by the trustees and honorary officers of the board in conjunction with the public affairs team. And in addition to that, we do also, where we have the opportunity to do so, to consult beyond that. So that's the first thing, and that's a time-honoured process and protocol that's now existed for many years. So there was no departure from that approach. I think I'd have to check, but I actually think that the FCDO statement did predate the statement by the Board of Deputies, and I think so I think that's the factual position on that. And beyond that, we gave a statement which we considered, which was a considered statement in all the circumstances. Obviously, the board doesn't subscribe to the statement that was made by the President of the United States, and I believe his own administration was somewhat caught on the hop by that and have rowed back from it considerably since. So, and it's not uncharacteristic of the way that business is done by this administration, but that opens up sort of wider issues for discussion about
Thank you, Adrian.
nature of current affairs.
I'm going to cut you off because I can see so many hands up. Phil, I'm going to pass you the floor. I also just want to say I'm not disposed to have a long discussion about Reverend Haley Ace. I think a lot of people feel strongly the issues have been aired. So, Phil, in your comments, could you deal with that in the hope that we might be able to move on? Because I've got at least 8 people, 9 people who want to speak. So, Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Philip, for your question. I don't think we need a vote on whether the Board of Deputies of British Jews is a Christian Zionist organisation. I think it's quite clear. Christian Zionists are Christian and we're Jewish. That being said, of course, interfaith in general relies on us speaking to people who have a different theology to ourselves. And I don't think just ab initio we say, well, just because someone has a different theology, we don't. You'll have noticed in the last month a lot of work we've done with Muslim communities. Again, theologies that we don't agree with. What I'd say specifically about this situation, and as Karen said, don't really want to get into the particulars because I think it's wrong to speak about individuals when they're not here. But I'm grateful to deputies who've raised the materials that they have done. We've had a good conversation between the honorary officers. I've had a good conversation with Reverend Ace about it, and with sort of typical generosity of spirit and grace, she said she doesn't want to be a distraction. So we're going to have some further conversations over the coming days, and I hope I expect we're going to land in the right place on it. But thank you to everyone for raising the issues and questions in the constructive way that you have.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so I've got Susan and Michael Reich, and then I know Sid Graham wants the floor. He sent me a message and said he can't raise his hand, so he will be number 4. Susan, the floor's yours.
Thank you, Susan Pascoe, Israel community in Hendon. So my question is directed to Phil. Very grateful to all that you and the honorary officers do. I just wanted to raise in relation to the debate today that we're having on how we should promote peace and security in Israel and the Middle East, and just to convey the view of the community who in a 2-hour meeting would prefer to see the board, or in addition to see the board, discuss how we can promote peace and security in this country so that we spend our time tackling something tangible we can do to improve the lives of Jewish people in this community at a time of continuing anti-Israel marches, which are supported by Hamas, by some supporters of Hamas, appalling problems with the BBC that you've just talked about and other media outlets, and generally to improve the situation here. So yes, we should discuss Israel, but other matters as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anne, the floor's yours.
Nora. Anne Crook, Menorah, my question is regarding the Land Rig Accords, which were recently signed by Phil and other leaders from the Jewish and Muslim faiths in order to progress interfaith relations and cooperation. I'd like to know if any of the glaring elephants in the room will be addressed. Denounced Hamas and their atrocities, or condemned the weekly hate marches on Britain's streets that have literally compared Jews to Nazis, called to globalize Intifada and destroy Israel from the river to the sea. Cooperation can only work if it is honest and goes both ways, and unless these issues are addressed and satisfactorily resolved, how can the Accords possibly be advantageous to the Jewish community?
Thank you very much, Anne. Michael Reich, the floor is yours, and then we'll go to Sid Braham.
Thank you. It's quite, first of all, it's Michael Reich, Mosaic Reform on Stanmore Hill. You've just taken the words out of my mouth, and that I was basically going to say much exactly the same, especially bearing in mind the disgusting and horrific events we've just seen in Gaza about the hostages coming back or not coming back. We need these 12 imams to together make a statement totally condemning what had happened. I think what's essential by this alliance, if you like, the optimistic alliance you've built up, that they actually take action. It's not a talking shop, I hope. Between us, it's they together, coming together, should make sure that they are speaking against horrific items that are happening, not only in this country, but also in Israel. And finally, I just want to say I congratulate you on setting that alliance up, and also particularly on the Commission on Anti-Semitism. These are items we haven't dealt with in the past, and I'm pleased to see the board dealing with these things now.
Thank you, Michael. Sid Braham, if we can find you, the floor's yours.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good morning. Sid Braham. It's my first speech as a deputy for the United Synagogue, having been many years for Barnet Synagogue. Crowdfund. This was a significant output from the future funding work stream, which was incepted by the F&O in the previous triennial. And I pay tribute to the board's leadership and the staff who took this forward, and the deputies who took it forward with gusto. Many people work so hard, and can I just say, if you haven't yet contributed, the lines are not yet closed. Mr. President, the total raised is great, but for the record, what does the fundraise project cost as a deduction from the raise? And a quick sneaky question on a different subject: when you having, Mr. President, when you having a follow-up meeting with the BBC?
Thank you very much for that clutch of questions. So, Phil, we've got a question about dealing with issues about peace and security here in the UK, some serious questions about the Drumlarrig Accords, and a request for a bit more information about the crowdfunding. Yes, it was fantastic. How much did it cost? And the BBC, which you've already partly addressed. So I'm going to give the floor to you and then ask the honorary officers if they have anything to add. Phil.
Thank you very much indeed. Susan, I completely agree. We shouldn't only speak about Israel. And I think it's a good thing, I think, that we've got 8 months in before having a debate. We're speaking about other things. The way I think we're working is, you know, we have these 5 priorities. I'm trying to cycle through them. So you'll see at the last board meeting, we really did have a focus on anti-Semitism. We had obviously the commissioners of the co-chairs of the Commission on Anti-Semitism, Met Commissioner, speakers from UJS and so on. So really had a focus on that. This time it is the international division, and with that focus, next time we're looking at community and education issues. So we're going to cycle through the various issues that I know are of concern. We don't want to focus singly on one, but obviously Israel is very much in our hearts and in our thoughts. And I think it's right that at this point of change, we get a sense check from you to help guide statements like the one that was referred to in the previous question. But I agree with you substantively. We don't want to be singularly focused on any one of those topics. We need to be working across all of them. To Anne and Michael, thanks for your questions about the Drumlanrig Accords. And I think, you know, some of the concerns that Anne raised are precisely why we need these accords. We need to be thinking about how we challenge the anti-Semitism we've seen in parts of the Muslim community, the extremism we've seen. We need to do that by building a common framework. Now, the accords themselves speak about that problem, how we tackle anti-Semitism. It recognizes that problem. And now we need to move from statements to action. And you'll know that we have the Optimistic Alliance, and it has 6 work streams, and this kind of takes in Michael's points as well. 2 of those the work streams, I'll tell you what they are. Tackling anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred. So we're going to be getting right into that question. We're going to be discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and how we handle that as something that I know is at the base of a lot of those challenges. We're going to be talking about extremism. We're going to be talking about the shared challenges and opportunities around religious freedom, social justice, and education. And what we want to move from is just declarations, which are important. And this is historic, and it's the first time we've had leaders of this seniority across Jewish and Muslim communities making a shared declaration. But we need to move that from thought word to action, word to deed, and I embrace the challenge that you've set for us. It's a big challenge, but one that we take seriously. Sid, I'll answer the question on the BBC. We are in discussion about a further meeting. We've requested meetings with the chair and the director general, but it's not just about the meeting, it's about the action. We want to speak to them, yes, because we want to press the case, but really we just cannot accept this constant equivocation and equivalence between Hamas and a democratic country, Israel, with the absolutely disgraceful things that we've seen over the last few days as a result of that. But we're going to be pressing that very hard. I actually don't technically know the answer about the costs. I'm going to ask whether Ben Crown, our treasurer, or Michael will be able to say how much it costs to put these things on, if they know, or if not, to come back to you at another point.
I can do that for a second, Mr. President.
Yes, you're very muffled though.
Okay, let me.
That's much better, by the way.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, so the platform fee, I think, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say exactly what it is, because they are obviously a commercial enterprise. It is, I think, market sensitive information. I think it is, as with all these platforms, I think I can say generally, whether you have one that is specific to the Jewish community. Oh, sorry, I flipped my camera somehow. I'm just going to keep talking. Whether it's one of the community specific ones or it's a larger platform like Just Giving, you're talking about small single digit percentages. That covers transaction fees, that covers the cost of setting up the platform, that covers the overheads and the time of the entity that's actually providing the service. I think I've done them with a couple of different teams over the years, and we're very happy that we've got value for money on this one from the people at Charity Extra, who I think were running 3 other crowdfunds at the same weekend as they were running one for us.
Thank you very much, Ben. And I'd like, on behalf of Deputies, to actually thank the board. The training that you gave ambassadors was really great. It really did empower us to get over ourselves and ask people for money. And it was a great event, and all credit to you for doing that. Jeremy, I understand you'd like to come in on the drumline rig accords.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. One of the things that were mentioned in the drumline record are the importance of education, particularly education public bodies, about to become much more faith aware generally. This is something I've been banging on about for the last couple of years, and I think this is something we can really take advantage of very much indeed. It may well be that we build upon organizations like Stand Up and We Stand Together, who have been doing joint Jewish and Muslim presentations. And I also know there's a group in South Manchester doing the same thing. And I think this is going to be very, very important. And I will be on Thursday, Tuesday, when we have our first meeting of the Optimistic Alliance. Of course, I'm paired up with Ashfaq Chowdhury, who will be leading the education stream. So I'm looking forward to that very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thank you, Deputies, for your patience. You've been waiting to speak for a while now, and I will give you the floor. I've got Josh Aronson, then Daniel Levy, and then Rachel Goldberg. So, Josh, the floor's yours.
Hi, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. Everyone is connected to one another. I recently had the opportunity to go and visit the Ukrainian Jewish community together with the Ukrainian Jewish Federation. Tomorrow marks 3 years to the beginning of the war in Ukraine. May I ask that the board takes it upon themselves to bring a delegation to Ukraine to see the work of the Ukrainian Jewish Federation and to see what we, as the British Jewish organization, can do to help the Ukrainian Jewry. I'd be happy to facilitate.
Thank you very much, Josh. Daniel and then Rachel.
Good morning. Daniel J. Levy, Bournemouth and Elstree United Synagogue. I do not own any football clubs or hotels. A question for Andrew Gilbert. On 19th of October 23, the Defence Division sent out an email about a new email account called Reporting Bias at bod.org.uk, where deputies would be encouraged to report media bias. Could you possibly provide a written update on the response from deputies in advance of next month's plenary?
Thank you, Daniel. Rachel.
Thank you. Good morning. Rochelle Goldberg, Kenton United Synagogue. This is a question for the President and the Senior Vice President. On December the 11th, Sir Keir Starmer committed and added 13 million to the UN Palestinian Aid Agency, and this is on top of the 21 million announced in July. And we know that UNRWA cannot be trusted after it was found by the Israeli government. The number of employees were a subterfuge and being involved in October the 7th massacre. So would the Senior Vice President and also the President raise that at the next meeting with Sir Keir Starmer? And in addition, of course, the non-action of the International Red Cross. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, and my apologies to you for mispronouncing your name. Flora, you wanted to speak. I'll take your question and then I'll revert to the honorary officers.
Thank you, British Emuna. With regards to the crowdfunding, I want to add my praise. Fantastic. But this is a very important question because it was crucial for the board that we raise this money. Is there any way that we can, next time we do it, and please God, we should do it again, that we can coordinate with the other charity extras and crowdfunding or whatever? Because it's very exciting. For those who did it the first time, I was so overjoyed to see the faces and how people went into it with gusto. But many of us, we are asked every single week, and I do 3 or 4 of them for various charities, and I found it very, very upsetting, very frustrating. Is there any way, because we're inundated with them, that we can sort of coordinate, as I said before, I'm repeating myself, that it should be staggered? I think the charities themselves should do that because they make a lot of money and they're not considering the ones who fundraise.
Thank you very much, Flora. So I'm disposed to go to Adrian first to answer the international questions, particularly on Ukraine and on UNRWA. So Adrian, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I, like many, I'm sure, of the deputies, I've got my own personal connections with Ukraine. I worked there for a number of years and I got friends living in Ukraine under the vicious assault of the Russian state, and particularly anxious for the position of Ukraine at the present time. I was due in my capacity as SVP to go to Odessa a few months ago with World Jewish Relief, and at short notice the visit was cancelled because of the increase in direct rocket attacks on Odessa, and indeed one of the places where we were due to stay was actually hit by a rocket the week we were meant to be there. So it was very, kol hakavod to you, Josh, for actually going to Ukraine, and it's something that I particularly want to do. But at the present time, it is difficult to have a secure visit there. But it's something very much that's on our mind, and if it is possible to do it, we would do so. Regarding UNRWA, this is an issue that the board has regularly raised with both the Foreign Secretary and other members of the FCDO, and has come up in the context of discussions with those who are relevant within wider government. So it's not something, Rochelle, you can be rest assured that hasn't been at the forefront of the issues that we've raised. So yes, you should know that, and obviously we will continue to do so.
Thank you very much. Ben, I don't know if you want to come in on the question of whether it's possible to do any coordination with regard to crowdfunding appeals.
Yes, absolutely, and I'll just obviously echo what's been said already, and it's said in my report as well, how grateful and appreciative we are to all the deputies who stood up and took part in this campaign as team leaders and as otherwise sharing and supporting the project. The nature of these things is they're only possible and they're only successful because of the involvement of many, many people. So that was so important, and it's hugely appreciated. I'm working on thank you cards right now. With regard to the specific issue of people being asked all the time to run these teams, people are being asked time to give to these. The board does run a communal diary, which is our internal within the community, where crowd funds are staked out, other things like dinners are staked out, so it's possible for people to coordinate should they wish to. I think we moved our date once because of a clash. We had a proposed date late last year and we moved it into February to avoid overlapping with someone else. I think it's particularly difficult, obviously, for the board as a representative organisation. We don't want to be running this at the same time that any of our members are running these. So I think we're trying at the moment. We'll give it a go to see if we can do any better. But ultimately, like you said, many different organisations are needing these. There's only 52 weekends in the year, so inevitably there's going to be some clumping, some overlap.
Thank you very much, Ben. Phil, I don't know whether you've got anything to add on that recent clutch of questions.
Only one thing to add on the UNRWA question. Rochelle, you may have seen last week that the Foreign Office and the government announced that it was reviewing its funding for UNRWA, which we welcomed. As Adrian says, the thing we've been calling for, and particularly in light of the really, really concerning allegations from Emily Damari that she was held in UNRWA facilities. That has caused a rethink. We certainly made that case very clearly to the government, and I've made that case in recent weeks, both at the Foreign Office with Adrian and in Downing Street. So they're very, very aware of our thoughts, and they've listened on this, and will continue to follow it up.
Thank you very much, Phil. I do have some more deputies who've asked for the floor, so thank you for your patience. I've got Hayden and then Joy. So Hayden Cohen, the floor's yours.
Hayden Cohen, Harrogate Hebrew Congregation. Just want to know where we're up to with Jewish Culture Month. I'm aware it's happening next year now. And are there any relationships with other organisations being developed to ensure that it is a successful endeavour?
Thank you for your question, Hayden. Joy Wolf, the floor is yours.
Joy Yeshurun Synagogue, Gatley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just feel that we should comment on the very poor way in which the hostages were treated, and the fact that as a result of it, some of the people of the Palestinians who were due to be released were actually held back and sent back, which I welcome very much. But the way that hostages are being treated and paraded, etc., is something that I think we should deplore.
Thank you very much, Joy. I've got Owen and then Penina. So Owen Granger, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Changing the subject completely, and the fear of, excuse me. I tried to raise a point of order, and this really is in substitute. I tried to intervene for the before the minutes were signed, because I don't think they're complete. However, I'm wondering what is being done with the questions that were put to the or were voiced for the Commissioner of Police at the last session, which we were denied the opportunity to put to him, although we had submitted them in writing.
Thank you very much, Owen. My apologies to you. I did not see that you were trying to track my attention while we were doing the minutes of the last meeting. If you could send your comments into the office, I'm sure that they will take them into account. So thank you for that. I've got Penina and then Carol, but there is somebody who just sent me a message and said they want to speak, and I have got the message, so they will come afterwards. Penina, the floor's yours. Penina Serrano, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just unmuted me.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
I just wanted to speak up for I like to speak up for the underdogs, and I did feel that on the day of the release of the dead hostages and the appalling situation, it was really slightly distasteful that we were having a meeting, sort of this massive witch hunt against this this charismatic evangelical lady who just wanted to join an international women's group, and she wasn't there to defend herself. And I just feel if we're going to start, like, calling out these kind of people, what about, the Church of England? What have they done to help us? I know that these charismatic Christians. I have a lot of friends who've donated thousands to help Jewish charities, and they've never once tried to proselytize us. And I just feel also that it is about International Women's Day. It's not about religion. And I guess the question is really to Phil, like, I understood that you said she was a good friend and she would be talking, but today you said she doesn't want to be a distraction. So I'm just wondering whether it will still go ahead. And I do think that
Thanks, Panina. You've made your point, and Phil, I'm sure will wrap up and include a response there. I've got Carol and then Harry Lampert.
Carol Abrahams, Catford and Bromley Synagogue. I was interested just a few minutes ago to hear that there is a communal diary. There are several organisations that belong to the board that have special Shabbatot, such as Jewish Women's Aid, Jamie, others. And they all seem to be around this time of the year, towards the end of the year, the beginning of the year, around HMD and Tu B'Shvat. And it's not helpful because these are winter Shabbatot where we're lucky sometimes if we get a decent turnout at shul in our community. I'm sure we're not alone. Could these Shabbatot not be spread through the year? Could these various communities not get together through the communal diary and just spread it? Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And now Harry Lampert, if we could give the floor to Harry Lampert.
Hi, so this is a question. Sorry,
you need to say you can.
I'm the 35 observer for St Albans Resorte. This is a question for Phil. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for putting on the narrative shift sessions. And I was wondering in future if it would be possible for members of the board to suggest potential influencers who could be involved to get both a wider range of people across multiple social media sites, and also to show actually, who are the names who are getting out there and who are people choosing to follow from within our group, because we are a relatively diverse group of people.
Thank you, Harry. Paul Hart, the floor's yours.
Thank you. This is a question to the President. Phil, at the last plenary, we mentioned to you that some of us had been reported to our synagogues for not voting in the correct way. My question to you is that, do we not have freedom of action, freedom of speech? And I think you said you're also going to pass this to the executive.
Thank you very much, Paul. So quite a lot in that last clutch of questions. What I'm disposed to do, because we're running reasonably well on time, is give the floor to each of the honour officers in turn, and then have Phil sweep up. So perhaps I could go to you, Ben, first, because I think you said you would maybe deal with the communal diary questions. I meant Ben. I don't know what I said, but I meant Ben.
Yes, sure. So sorry if it wasn't clear before, Carol. The communal diary is not something we coordinate. There is a secure page on the board's website. People can send in things. Organisations can look at it and see what's being programmed, so they can see, well, there may be a clash, there might not be a clash. Make their own decisions. We're not in a position to tell organisations when they should or shouldn't arrange their events. All we're doing, we think it's a valuable and useful thing to do, is to, as events are planned and passed to us, to put them in a diary so people can see, well, this weekend is busy, this Thursday night is booked, and so forth. I think that's all we're able to do as sort of an umbrella organisation. Though of course you're very welcome to reach out to individual organisations if you feel that they are not scheduling in a convenient and accessible way.
Did you want to respond to Flora's point as well, Phil? Ben.
Sorry, I thought I did already. I think that was the question, which then prompted the communal diary, which then had Carol's follow-up.
Fine. Okay, great. Andrew, lots of questions here. I just wondered if you wanted to respond to any of them in particular, and I'm hoping that we will in this round get a bit more information on Jewish Culture Month, maybe something on the hostage treatment and how they were paraded, and yeah, I think those are the main things that came up, but anything else you may have
Two
heard?
questions that I'm going to address. One is an answer yes to Daniel Levy. You will happy to take that back next month or whatever. The second thing was that Owen Granger's comment that you sort of suggested handling by sending back. I myself had a long conversation. The situation is that when we have guest speakers at the Board of Deputies, we can do a number of different things. Sometimes they will speak, there will be no questions, they go away, that's it. The secondary thing is we may open up for a limited number of questions that are planned in advance. What we did for this, and if it wasn't explained properly, it's been done before, we tried to get a gauge of questions that deputies are interested in. We took those questions, the Public Affairs Department, and put those questions into 5 questions, which we then passed to the head of the police, and we said, would you like to answer these questions that have come in general from our deputies? And those were the ones I read out at the meeting, and those are the ones Sir Mark Rowley answered. In addition to that, as London Jewish Forum and CST are both partners, we said to them both, London Jewish Forum took it up, that they would they like to say, ask a question themselves, and Amanda, who is the co-chair of the London Jewish Forum and also Former Defence, she was the one who took that up. So that's what we did. I've explained that already. It's quite a normal procedure, and we would go ahead doing the same in future meetings. I don't think we can go back on other questions in that way, but we do take up in a more general way any of the questions that are asked with the police, and they form part of our general work.
Super. Thank you, Andrew. Jeremy, do you want to look at Jewish Cultural Month or indeed anything else?
Indeed, thank you, Chair. Yes, Hayden, it's a good question, and thank you for asking it. Basically, we've got a situation, a good situation, I hasten to add, where a group of, as you know, a group of cultural organisations have already been talking about it, led by Alistair Falk. Dawn attended a meeting with them recently, and Phil and I want to speak to them as well. Once we've got that meeting arranged and sorted, I've got a timetable that basically says by the end of sort of May, June, I want to have spoken to all the major Jewish cultural organisations, so that we've got a rough idea of the kind of things that they can offer, and already, if you like, a sort of skeleton timetable. Now, that does not ignore, of course, the major input that celebrities can put in, and also the and also to bring in the communities and a lot of people like yourselves who are involved in purveying Jewish culture. Had an excellent meeting on Thursday. Sarah and I met Alan Benstock, Alan Benstock from Milim in Leeds, who has got a wealth of experience of running cultural events, and he gave us a lot of very, very practical suggestions about the kind of things that we should be doing. Not so much the kind of things, but the way to go about it. And he suggested maybe start fairly conservatively, possibly have aim for about 12 events in total over that month, or 12 major events, and of course we can have other small events as well. I also want to make sure that the smaller regional communities outside Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool and Glasgow, the smaller region, and Birmingham, the smaller regional communities are also not ignored. And we want to see if we can get one of the big cultural organisations maybe to have an event in one of those communities as well. So things are moving. We're developing a timetable. We know there are players in the field that need to be consulted, and we're getting on with it.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Phil, I'm disposed to take the 2 questions from Clive Lawton and Adam before passing the floor to you, if that's okay. So Clive, thank you for your patience. The floor's yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Clive Lawton from the Bristol Hebrew Congregation. I understand that these are supposed to be questions and not speeches, and therefore I am going to ask the honorary officers whether they will receive the commendation from the Bristol Hebrew Congregation in regards to Jack Baldwin, the Public Affairs Officer of the board, who I believe is leaving fairly soon. Jack spotted that the Bristol City Council had moved a silly student politics motion about BDS, and he spotted it even though nobody in Bristol had. So I think we have to say, verily, the board neither slumbers nor sleeps. And I think it's something worth mentioning that the Board of Deputies actually has our back, even when we don't notice these things happening. And now we're progressing it.
Clive, what a lovely intervention. Thank you. Adam, the floor's yours.
Thank you. Adam Luria, Newstoke Newington Shaw, first-time speaker. Question for the President. I was wondering if in conversations with the BBC, you were aware that there is a group of Jewish producers and people working in television, of which I'm one, including the former director of the BBC, Danny Cohen, who are also having conversations, and whether there are any plans to coordinate with this group in those conversations with the BBC regarding its coverage of what's going on in Israel.
Thank you very much. Before giving you the floor, Phil, I would just like to thank the board staff, Michael Wiggin, his entire team. I know how much staff time goes into making a crowdfunding campaign work. You're working 25 hours a day for about 5 days on the trot. So thank you very much through you, Michael, to all of your staff from us. It was really an incredible effort on the staff side. Phil, a wrap-up intervention.
Here, and absolutely, the staff are an amazing team, and Jack, credit to Jack, and please, Michael, do pass that on from us. That is praise well deserved. We are sorry to be losing Jack. He's going actually to work, I think, at the local government association, so will be a friend, I'm sure, in an important place. Still there, and so we are in the process of recruiting for various positions. So if you see people, but yeah, the team is brilliant, and it's a real pleasure to work with them. I'm going to sort of go in reverse order through the questions. Adam, yes, we are aware of Danny's group, and I wasn't actually aware you were in it, but welcome. As a first-time speaker, thank you for that. We are coordinating. We're looking to work with them to make sure we get the maximum value. We're also talking to the Jewish staff networks at the BBC to hear both people working inside, around the BBC, to make sure we understand the full picture. Paul, your question is well noted. We did I did refer it to the Chief Executive. We have had a discussion about it. And really we want to balance the following things. I think it's important that we remain accountable to our organisations, and they send us, they ought to know what we do. So I want to be as open as we can about that. At the same time, I don't want a culture of sort of intimidation for different perspectives, and I think we're seeking to strike that balance, and I've made that clear in various places since the last meeting, and Anne raised the point, and I think raised it very well. Harry, thank you very much for coming to the Narrative Shift event. Just to let people know, what we did is we've brought in a range of influencers in the Jewish community to talk about the challenges on social media and how some of the brilliant creatives are pushing back, how they're creating content and so on. And they came up with a series of recommendations, which we're in the process of putting together and creating a group that will really begin to help expand the Jewish community's ability to respond on social media platforms, whether Twitter, X, Insta, TikTok, the whole ball game. In short answer to your question, yes, we are looking to do more in this space. And so if there are deputies that have influencers that they'd like to recommend that we work with, very, very keen to get those recommendations. I'd also say this, one of the recommendations that's come out of it is that we should train deputies in social media. I know some of you already are influencers, some of you are new to it, some of you are getting on with it, but actually training each and every one of you in terms of social media usage could be a good thing. Different people will take it up to different levels, but I think we're really excited about that, and then potentially rolling that out to communities so that we really can expand the Jewish community's reach and effectiveness on social media. So thanks, Harry, for raising that. It was a really good event that we had, and we're looking at how we roll that out further. Tina, as I said, don't really want to get into further discussion about it. I think what's clear and I would agree with you about this, is that we do need a better understanding of evangelicals and what that is about, and Christian Zionism. People have raised it. I think there's some questions, some confusion, some different issues. Let's have a think about how we take that forward. But as I've said, we're in discussion. We want to land this in the right place. I'm confident in the coming days we will do just that. Joy. Now, yes, Joy, really concerned about the way that the hostages have been treated. You may have noted we make statements after each round of releases, often drawing on concerns about what has happened. We've seen, obviously, the Israeli government has said that it wants assurances about the end of these degrading spectacles. We saw yesterday how not only was there that whole stage release again, and clearly Hamas coaching the hostages. You can see them whispering, and then suddenly they'd smile and wave and stuff like that. It's really grotesque. But also we know that some of the hostages still there were forced to watch, record a video, and so on. It's really grotesque, and I think we're right to demand things are different. We did meet, I can't remember if it's your question or an earlier question, with the British Red Cross a few weeks ago, and conveyed, as the member body from the UK, our concerns about some of the things relating to the ICRC. I know they have a difficult role, but there are definitely things we think should be done differently, and we definitely want to see pushing back on the grotesque spectacles that we've seen, and I agree with you on that, really grotesque stuff. And yes, Hayden, on the British Jewish Culture Month, I mean, Jeremy's covered much of it, but just to sort of expand it, 3 strands: celebrities, cultural organisations and local communities are the way that we're beginning to really think about this. Getting the JLE, Jewish Living Experience exhibition, or some form of it into local communities, working out how we lift all of the cultural institutions, working out how we deploy celebrities. It's getting more and more traction. You saw there was a question in Parliament about it. We're now working on the month and when it should be. And we continue to welcome your views. I know the CED has been discussing it. We want to not clash with other significant months, like Black History Month or Pride Month, or indeed significant Jewish festivals. We'd also probably quite like it to be in the summer, so there's a kind of sense of the upbeat about it. There is a kind of cheeky thought that maybe we make it something like Sivan, which is our own month. It doesn't clash with anything. It is in May and June. It has Shavuot at the beginning, but it is a summer month. But we continue to welcome your thoughts about it as we go. But we're really excited about it, and we, as I say, are hoping to launch it in 2026.
Thank you very much, Phil, and thank you to all of you deputies. A lot of questions there. You were very self-disciplined, which enabled me to get them all in. And thank you, honorary officers, for your responses. The next item on our agenda is an application to join the Board of Deputies from the Focus Forum. I would just say, as a member of the Constitution Committee, that the efforts that the board has made to respond to the fact that increasing number of Jewish people do not manifest their Jewishness through membership of a synagogue, but through the work of other communal organizations and other entities, the fact that we've tried to get these kinds of organizations into the board is really admirable, because it means that the board is more representative. So you have a document before you, the membership application from Open Forum. Your Constitution Committee has done due diligence on it, and we have a paper that Dilys has read. You will have noted that the Focus Foundation is concerned with transforming the lives of adults with learning disabilities and those on the autistic spectrum around the Northwest Manchester area. Are there any questions on this, or can we proceed to a vote? I see your hand, Paul.
Do they also help Down syndrome? I ask this because my late brother was Downs.
I'm not sure I have the answer to that question, but we can certainly get it for you. Unfortunately, Dilys, who is most familiar with their activities, is not available to us now. She's out of the country. David Mendoza-Wolfson is on the call. I don't know if he's more familiar with the specific documentation than I am. If not, I don't see David asking for the floor. Then may we get that answer back to you, Paul? Oh, yes. Josh, please, the floor's yours.
So I actually know Focus because I myself am autistic and living in Manchester. And Focus do incredible work. I know they do very small work in Down syndrome work. They do want to go further in Down syndrome, but obviously at the moment they're more focused in mental health autism. But as they grow, they do intend to go into other disabilities. And I have to say that they help people incredibly. As someone who's autistic myself and has worked a bit with Focus, I know they help people incredible.
Josh, I really
Thanks,
want to
Josh.
thank you for asking for the floor and for giving us that detail about the organisation. It's so valuable to have that. Thank you. Owen.
Obviously, I'm really delighted to see this application, but I'd be really interested to know, do we know, are any of the trustees or the staff, do they identify as a disabled person themselves? Because I think that's pretty important. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have the answer to that, but I know that their intention is that the chair of trustees will serve as a deputy. So that would be a question if we were to vote them into membership, that we could ask them in very short order. Since we don't have anybody from Focus here, I'm wondering if we could proceed to a vote, and then if we have any questions, we can make sure to ask them and get clarification from them. May we proceed to a vote on their membership application? Yes, I'm seeing people who would like us to make that move. David Benson, do you want to speak, or you're just in favor of us doing this? Yeah, okay, that's kind. Okay, in that case, I believe I need that the under 35s do not vote. Is that right? Do they have to be removed from the room? So I'm sure our technical crew is in the process of doing that. So in that case, we will, I'm going to ask you to vote on if you approve that we admit to membership the Focus Forum. The question is, can we approve Focus Forum to be members of the board? I see you people are using their hands to raise as an indication of assent. So I'm hoping that the tech team will let me know when they have finished counting, if this is an okay way of doing that, rather than using anything else. I'm seeing so many hands. This is a great vote of confidence, and I want to thank you, Josh, for really enabling us to have a bit of context for this vote that we're undertaking right now. Tech team, I'm going to rely on you to let me know when you've stopped counting and when we can move on. It looks pretty unanimous to me, but as I say, you have that information and I don't. Good. Well, what a great endorsement for their work. Thank you. I look forward to having the Focus Forum people with us, and it's great that the board is becoming more and more representative of British Jewry as a whole. Great. Thank you all so very much. We now move to a very exciting item on our agenda, which is the open forum. I see Dory Schmetterling has raised his hand. Did you want to speak? And if you do, I need you to put your camera on so that people can see you.
Of course. Hello. Good constituencies, New West Bayswater. I just wanted to ask. I wanted to ask in advance. Really matter because I voted for the admission. I was looking at the detail. How many people are actually? Because obviously something to do with membership or observance. Sorry, activity in the Jewish community. Do we know how many people are helped, or how we measure the constituency of the foundation?
I believe that information was in the annual report documentation that they submitted. I'm not 100% sure because, as I say, it was Dilys that did that work, but we can get that clarification for you, Dory. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to move to the exciting open forum element of our agenda this afternoon on the topic, how should we best promote peace and security?
Sorry, Karen, we do need.
Karen,
Just as a
sorry, we need an
process point.
against the Focus Foundation
Yeah.
vote.
Oh,
we need an against.
I need to ask. I couldn't see any hands that weren't that I didn't do. Of course we do. Are there any votes against admitting into membership of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, the Focus Forum? Are there any votes against? I see none. Excellent. Thank you all very much. That's super. And thank you for that clarification, team. Sorry to be so hapless. Excellent. Okay, so now perhaps we can move to the open forum agenda item. How should we best promote peace and security in Israel and the Middle East? Adrian, I'd like to pass the floor to you to introduce this item.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen. As Karen says, we now have an open forum. It's about 40 minutes. And it's the subject matter is how should we best promote peace and security in Israel and the Middle East? The opportunity to have this discussion comes at a very frenetic and emotional time as we come towards the end of phase 1 of the temporary ceasefire. And at the end of a particularly difficult week amongst difficult weeks, with the macabre and shocking theatrics around the release of the dead bodies of the Bibas family and Oded Lifshitz. I don't believe that other than at division level, we have had an open forum on these issues since the events of 7th October 2023. And I'm being honest in saying that part of me thinks that the issues are so enormous and difficult to comprehend and to understand that this is now the time for a discussion. However, the issues, the wider issues regarding Israel and the Middle East remain and are, we can be sure, the subject of consideration and discussion by the Israeli government, by the new US administration, our own government, and across the Middle East, whether allies, putative allies, dedicated foes, or those in a hostile peace. The wider issues shall remain on the agenda. And of course, the events of the here and now bleed into the wider issues. A reminder that the board remains in principle committed to a two-state solution, a safe and secure Israel next to a viable Palestinian state. But beyond that, we don't commit to timing, to borders or resolution of the no doubt very complex issues around achieving this goal. These are for the parties to determine themselves in negotiation, which is why we oppose any unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Of course, the issues extend beyond Israel and the Palestinians to the continuing malignant role of Iran and its proxies, however much they have been diminished. And it also extends to the remarkable durability of the Abraham Accords, and we very much hope that other states within the region will join those accords in due course. So without more ado, I'm going to hand over the forum back to Karen and give the opportunities for deputies to make their contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adrian. So on this particular agenda item, this is really the opportunity for everybody to hear from each other. So it doesn't take the form of a Q&A. I won't be going back to Adrian every 5 minutes to get his view. Is this really an opportunity for the board to take the temperature of where we are as deputies on this particularly difficult issue? I've got quite a few speakers who already want to speak. I will, as usual, be very strict with time, so that we can have as many people as possible speak. And I think we're going to try and give you 2.5 minutes each and see how that goes. So the first group of speakers I have is Richard, then Karen Worth, then Harriet Goldenberg. So Richard Cohen, the floor's yours.
Thank you very much. The Board of Deputies has a Facebook page where announcements are made, and there are very often some very anti-Israel and anti-Semitic comments which go completely unanswered. There was one example the other week where I engaged with one of these people, and every time he made a comment, I made a comment back. It was a real tennis match, but I didn't give up. And ultimately, it's a question of knowing your history, knowing what the best policies are, and not getting flustered. And eventually, at the end of this exchange, which everyone can see on Board of Deputies' Facebook site, he ended up by saying shalom. So I do think it's important to know our history, and I do think it's important to take encouragement from people who are excellent persuaders, the best persuaders. And in that spirit, in 1 minute 30, I'm going to give you an adaptation of what Winston Churchill said, which is quite embarrassing, but I find it quite inspiring as well. We shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight on campus. We shall fight in the press and on social media. We shall fight with growing confidence in the justice of our cause. We shall defend our honour, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the radio and on TV. We shall fight in public and in private forums. We shall never surrender. Even if, which I do not for a moment believe, life becomes intolerable for us in the UK, we will join our brothers and sisters in Israel until in God's good time, all peoples of goodwill between the river and the sea will walk together in majesty, in justice, and in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I've got Karen, Harriet, and then Eleanor. So Karen Worth, the floor's yours.
Hi, sorry, difficulty unmuting. Hi, Karen Worth from Nottingham Liberal Synagogue. So the question is how best to promote peace and security in Israel? Well, I really believe that it is important to work with groups within Israel and the diaspora who are working across communities, Arab, Jews, Palestinians, to work towards a peaceful solution. Groups such as Standing Together, Rabbis for Human Rights, Combatants for Peace, the Alliance for the Middle East Peace. The board has a policy of supporting the two-state solution, and I know that this seems really far off right now, and no one knows quite how that could be implemented. But surely our job as diaspora Jews, and specifically the Board of Deputies, is to help support those organisations who are working in the direction of cooperation and peace. Any long-term solution, I think, needs to come from grassroots Israelis and Palestinians, and the board should be promoting support for organisations and individuals that spread peace and cooperation rather than division and conflict and further warmongering. That's not going to bring us peace. And worse still, ethnic cleansing should be absolutely off the table, and we should be very, very clear that we're not going there. Thanks, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, Karen. That's valuable. I'm going to ask the tech team to reduce the time, if everybody agrees, from 2.5 minutes to 2 minutes, because I can already see that I've got enough people who want the floor that 2.5 minutes will make us go over time. Do people think that's the right thing to do? Can I have a vague nod? Reduce from 2.5 to 2 to get more people? Thank you very much. So can I ask the tech team to adjust the clocks accordingly? I've got Harriet, then Eleanor, then Karen Maxwell. So Harriet Goldberg, the floor is yours.
Sorry, there we go. Yes, Harriet Goldenberg, the LJS. I'm very glad that we are having this conversation. I hope that it's an opportunity for us to be listening to each other as a little model of what constructive discussion and debate could be, because clearly there are a great many views on the board. I want to endorse everything that Karen just said, and I don't want to bother repeating it. The board statement policy is in favor of a two-state solution. That's that's there, but we don't make enough fuss about it. I think we should be shouting it loudly, repeatedly. Of course, it's a difficult, seemingly intractable problem. But the truth is, and this goes back to some of the questions earlier to the president and the HOs, not only do we care deeply about what happens in the Middle East, we are hugely affected by what happens in the Middle East. And so actually, the Jewish community in this country is affected by what happens there and by the possibility of this situation degenerating into something even worse. We will be horrendously affected by the growth of anti-Semitism worldwide. A two-state solution is a vision. And there's a hell of a lot of on-the-ground work needed to be done. But we have to hold tight to that vision. It's the only possible future for the Middle East and for us here as Jews living safely, comfortably with our heads up high.
Thank you very much, Harriet. And again, I'm grateful to everybody who doesn't quite take their 2 minutes. It will enable me to squeeze more people in. Eleanor, then Karen, then Harry Lampert. Eleanor Milne, the floor's yours.
Thank you. So yes, I'm Eleanor Milne, Deputy for Yachad, and in that role, I'm speaking on behalf of our many thousands of supporters. They engage with us as an organisation because what they want to see is a political resolution to the conflict. They believe that Israel can only prosper and thrive alongside a viable and independent Palestinian state. And I'm also within the board co-chair with Daniel Grossman of the board's two-state solution working group. We all on the board want to support Israel, and to do that, we need to be part of promoting a path to peace in two states, and that's however difficult it seems. The board, as we've heard already, is committed to a two-state solution, and there is no viable alternative to that. Israel needs this for its future. I just want to reinforce what Harriet and what Karen have said. I think however far away and however difficult it seems, there are a few ways that the board can contribute to this. So firstly, we have this clear policy in favour of two states. We should be, as Harriet said, shouting about it, refer to it in all our public statements related to the conflict, in all the private advocacy that I know people work hard on with government and with other representatives. We should be publicly opposing all developments that make two states harder to achieve, and that clearly includes President Trump's recent proposals around Gaza that we spoke about earlier, and any potential proposal to annex the West Bank, which President Trump has indicated may come soon. Both of those proposals stand clearly in opposition to two states. And secondly, and really importantly, we can support and we can work with the many Israelis and Palestinians who are working together for this. We can learn from them through our meetings, and we can support their work. If Israelis and Palestinians themselves can continue working for two states, keep their hope and keep the efforts up despite the current reality, then we can do so too, and it's our duty to support them in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. Karen Maxwell, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Karen Maxwell from the Liberal Jewish Synagogue. I'll probably be quite quick because I'm just really endorsing what Karen was saying, what Harriet was saying, and what Eleanor was saying. But I think that maybe taking it a bit further, I think the issues of trying to achieve some unanimity within the board, which is probably even more challenging than maybe achieving peace in the region. But I do think it is really, really important that there's a kind of cabinet responsibility that whilst we can have these fantastic debates and differences, we need to have very clear, strong statements coming out from the board that we all can more or less work with, and not feel that we have to undermine those. So I think it is really important that we develop our statements around what the board believes in. I think identifying key friends within the UK, whether that's politicians or whoever, people who can advocate with us, I'm probably saying non-Jewish friends, and maybe thinking about that. I love the idea of working with social media. I'm useless in that area, but I would really welcome, because that seems to be the way we should be communicating. So I think trying to achieve greater single voice from the board is really important. And as Harriet said, shouting louder, identifying key friends, and being very clear on what we need. If we sit in front of Keir Starmer or Lamy or whoever it is, what is it we want from them to support that process? Because I feel at the moment there's a little bit of mealy-mouthed weasel words, as one of my friends would say. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I've got Harry, then Philip Goldenberg, then Phil Diamond. So Harry Lampert, the floor's yours.
Hi, Harry Lampert, under 35 observer, St Albans, Missouri. As diaspora Jews, a tiny minority in countries around the world, we are regularly put into a position of being ambassadors for our people, whether we want to or not. And as such, I think one of the best things that we as the Board of Deputies, a group who have chosen to put ourselves into this position, and one of the public faces of British Jewry can do, is to make it very clear where our beliefs lie for security in things like a two-state solution. Yeah, this has been one of the worst weeks for global Jewry since the October 7th massacre, and it is more important than ever, given the absolute horrors that we have seen, that we do not compromise in our convictions. And this includes standing against people who may be allies in some ways, but hold intolerable views in others. Someone could be pro-Israel, but if they are also pro-ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza or the West Bank, we have to condemn these views because they are mutually exclusive to the board's policies on the two-state solution. Yeah, this is an ideal dream, but we need to aim for an ideal in this scenario because any other solution, one that involves Jews or Palestinians being thrown out, is completely unacceptable. We have to make sure that the Overton window is not shifted towards ethnic cleansing. If we start from a position that we want equality for all, if we compromise on that in the slightest, we are giving into discrimination. And as the board, we need to make it incredibly clear that we believe there is a future where both Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Philip, Phil, and then Lawrence. To Philip Goldberg, the floor's yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Philip Goldberg, Northwest Surrey Synagogue. I'm a Zionist, I think we all are, but I'm a liberal Zionist, as that position was brilliantly set out by Jonathan Friedland of The Guardian in the New York Review of Books some time ago. And if you can hear a high-pitched sound from Yerushalayim and Rehovot, it is Herzl and Weizmann, who are also liberal Zionists, turning in their graves at this dreadful Israeli Prime Minister and government, who are frankly doing more damage to the Zionist project than Hamas ever could. We have to call out their elements of extremism, not just to assert our own Jewish ethical values and as a matter of human decency, but also, and I say that as somebody involved in interfaith work, because we cannot credibly go to Muslims, this was said earlier, say you ought to be calling out Hamas, unless we are prepared in the public domain to call out our own extremists. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I've got Phil, then Lawrence, and then Nat.
Thanks, Karen. Phil Diamond, Shen United Jewish Community. I really think the board needs to review its position on the two-state solution and come up with some statements which are now rather more sophisticated and maybe a wider approach. I'd recommend to board members to read Matthew Syed in the Sunday Times this morning, a brilliant article. He's a Muslim columnist who's gone round and spent some time in Israel and just taking soundings from people on both sides of the line, and just talking to ordinary Palestinians who didn't know who he was. 90% all were saying that the future has got to be the elimination of Israel. And I think now we need to review our position and talk in a more wider sense about neutralizing Iranian influence and not just come up with the mantra of two-state solution. I think that's been buried. And if you read Matthew Syed, he'll give good reasons why that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. So I've got Lawrence, Nat, and then Keith. And I will ask Keith to turn on his camera before I let him speak.
Right, thank you. Lawrence Ray, Planet and District Reform Synagogue. I mean, first of all, an instant reaction to the previous speaker. Of course, I understand the two-state solution is being called into question in many ways, not least by Israel itself. But the two-state solution is the only solution. It's the only way communities will find a way to live with each other in the region. I've worked professionally with programs of violence reduction and conflict resolution. There are 4 essential conditions for the beginnings of a peace process. One is a recognition of mutual hurts and apologies. We saw this in the Northern Ireland peace process, for example. Second, there is a recognition of mutual fears on both sides. There must be an acknowledgement of the possibility of a common future beyond the conflict. And fourthly, there must be an elaborate process, long-term process of post-conflict reconciliation. These things at the moment, of course, seem extremely difficult to achieve. And obviously we have to be realistic about this, but these are things that must happen if you have an effective peace process. In the beginning, I think there are various things that can happen. The ceasefire must hold, right? There must be no crazy proposals like ethnic cleansing that will only make the situation much worse. And as 1 or 2 people have said, we must try and work from the grassroots with groups in the region who want to see a peaceful resolution. But of course, there's no point pretending these things are going to happen easily or quickly. But there have been many historical cases of conflicts that people thought were irreconcilable that in fact were eventually reconciled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Nat, then Keith, then Emma. So Nat Coonan, floor's yours.
Thank you for unmuting. I really value this time to be able to contribute to this issue. I think it's really important that for complex issues like this, obviously the WhatsApp groups are a great way of arguing back and forth, but actually for issues like this, being able to see each other's faces and hear each other's voices reasonably and succinctly on this issue is a much better way of conveying that. I think the board's done a really good job of building relationships with government, and I think it's really time that the deep feeling of the Jewish community, especially on the issue of bringing hostages home and seeing a peaceful solution in Israel and in Palestine, is really what we're representing through those deep connections that we're building with government. I think it's really clear to see that the core opinion that stretches across the range of political views in the community is that hostages must be returned home, and as someone with family in Israel, that those people can live in peace and security. And I think the only way that we're currently seeing now for those things to all happen is for the current hostage and ceasefire deal to continue through all its phases. So I think that should be the core view, the core principle that the board looks to when guiding their statements. There are elements in the Israeli government that we all know who would rather not see the current deal go through all its phases and continue. And I think when those parts of the government publicly make that view known, it should be the board's view that we stand up to those voices, because continuing that ceasefire deal, continuing the hostage return deal through all its phases towards a peaceful solution really is very much in line with what that mainstream view is within the British Jewish community, that those things really must happen. And I don't think it's controversial for us to stand up to views, whether they're in Israel, whether they're in the far right in this country, whether they're from the American administration, that run counter to that. I think, and lots of people have echoed this view, that
I need to cut you off now. I'm really sorry. And in fact, I can already see I've got more speakers than our timing will allow. So I'm going to ask you all, I really, really hate cutting you off. I'm going to ask you all to be as concise as you can to give me the opportunity to squeeze in as many speakers as possible. So Keith, Emma, and then Zach. Keith, the floor's yours. Keith Myers. If we're having a technical difficulty with Keith, can we hold him in reserve and move to Emma?
Hi, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Emma Brand, Deputy for EHRS. I really welcome this conversation as well. Just to move
Am I
away.
unmuted now?
You are, but we're listening to Emma, so I'll take Emma and then go to you, Keith.
So just to move away briefly from the two-state solution, although I support a lot of what's been said so far, when President Trump spoke of a plan for Gazans to be relocated to neighboring countries, the board statement spoke of an alternative, which was a Marshall Plan for Gaza. And while that sounds good to me, not everyone who saw that understood that specific historical reference. And in some quarters, the board were accused of supporting ethnic cleansing. I think if the plan were to move towards fruition, and like we know the IDF is creating a plan in case that happens, I think it's really important for us to speak out much more clearly and vociferously against it and not equivocate through clever allusions, because not to speak out against it would be both a moral outrage and a danger to Jews in the UK, as we would be susceptible to accusations of support for forced displacement. I think there need to be really clear red lines that we hold on to as British Jews and not allow the Overton window to shift further towards extremist positions that will endanger peace and endanger British Jews.
Thank you so much, Emma. Keith, can we hear from you, please? I hope the tech team will enable that to happen. Keith Myers, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody else. If a two-state solution does happen, it clearly won't be for decades until the Gazans or the wider Palestinian population have clearly shown in all areas of activities, education, street signs, sports stadia, that they're no longer anti-Semitic. So we shouldn't expect anything to change particularly soon. What needs to be done in order for peace is not a ceasefire, but the return of hostages and a complete end of hostilities. So what do we need to do? Well, obviously, Hamas can't be involved. The Palestinian Authority have shown they can't be trusted either. They've failed to condemn October the 7th, since October the 7th, showing that they are implicitly supporting it. UNRWA has to be taken out of the equation and replaced by other UN and other agencies, given the multiple examples of how they support implicitly or explicitly what Hamas are doing. For example, did you know that only in UNRWA are people paid in dollars? The reason they're paid in dollars, well, Hamas moneylenders take a percentage of the dollars when changing into local currency. One of many examples of what can be done. What might be done? What solutions might there be? The idea of ethnic cleansing, that ended the day after Trump said it. It then became voluntarily Gazans who want to leave. The astonishing thing about here is why they can't go out of Egypt voluntarily. Gaza could become Egyptian again. Gaza could become part of Jordan. Gaza could become an emirate of the UAE. Or you could have something like Germany and Japan after World War II, with occupying troops, denazification, and the inability to have an army or any foreign policy. Just some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zach, Robert, and then Daniel. And I won't ask the clock to stop you, but I will ask you voluntarily if you can stick within 1.5 minutes. It will enable me to get more voices in.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Zach, Bates Fisher, Movement for Reform Judaism. I'm going to try and keep this on one important issue, because I could say about 1 billion things on this, but I think it's important to think about what we can do at home in the UK. There's a lot of impact that we have as the Jewish community, that the British government has, and also other communities in our country have. And I think it's important that we think about how our relations in this country do impact the Middle East. Phil talked earlier about the Drummond-McGregor Accords, which I think is a really positive step. I think it's important that we remember, whilst yes, of course, we do want the Muslim community to, not be anti-Semitic and not, show support for Hamas, which I'm sure we will agree. It's important that we also look internally and think, sometimes people in the Jewish community can be Islamophobic, and I think it's important that we think about how we try to better ourselves, as well as encouraging other communities in our country to do better. And I know that's not particularly related directly to the Middle East, but I think it is incredibly linked. Finally, I'll just say that I absolutely welcome Board's current position on two-state solution. I think there's more that could be done on concrete steps and how to get there. And I appreciate Adrian saying that the board opposes unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state on the basis that that might not necessarily bring us closer to a two-state solution. But I would encourage the honour officers and the international division to think about what concrete steps could be taken by the UK government, by the Board of Deputies, and by anyone else.
Thank you very much. Deputies, I really want to hear all the voices here, and I don't want to discriminate against those who haven't spoken by cutting them to 1 minute. So, ask you all how you feel about going on for an extra 10 minutes, and instead of me making every effort to bring you in by 12:30, bringing you in at 12:40. Are you all right about that? Yeah, I'm seeing nods, although admittedly my screen is only the people who want to speak, so a bit of Mandy Rice Davis there, they would, wouldn't they? But I'm going to go with that as a yes, and continue to ask all of my speakers to try and come in at a 1.5 and not 2, if they possibly can. I've got Robert, Daniel, and then Josh. Robert Stone, the floor is yours.
All right. Robert Stone, Pension Reform Synagogue. I'd like to begin, having criticised the Honour Office for lack of consultation before, to commend them for setting up this forum. It's been a really thought-provoking and useful debate. To Philip Goldenberg's reference to Herzl and Weizmann, I would like to add Ben-Gurion. I'm a political economist, and we have a technical term which is the Ben-Gurion trilemma. It's a variant of Condorcet's dilemma. I'm not going to give you a lecture now. It's called that because in 1946, 2 years before the establishment of the State of Israel, Ben-Gurion said, you can have a Jewish state on all of the territories but not democratic, or a democratic state on all of the territories but not Jewish, or a Jewish state that's democratic but not on all of the territories. In other words, in 1946, Ben-Gurion was advocating a two-state solution. And it seems to me there is no way round that trilemma. That is the only solution, and I'm delighted the board accepts it. Now, that's the easy bit. The difficult bit is how you make sure it's not on all the territories and democratic, both the new Palestinian state and, I have to say, Israel, which I think, whose democracy I think is becoming a bit weaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to tell deputies, I am disposed to close the speaker list soon. So if that's all right with you, because I don't want to go on till 4 o'clock and then that won't work at all. So I will close it after the next speaker has spoken. Daniel, Josh, and then Janvier. Daniel Grossman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I'm Daniel Grossman, and I represent UJS, and I'm the co-chair of the Two-State Solution Working Group alongside Eleanor Milne. My first point is that I'd really like us to maybe pick up on some of the very good points that have been raised today. I think it's work that we'd really like to get stuck into. So that's the first point. Secondly, I'm really concerned about the increasing settler violence in the West Bank, which is happening daily. There was a horrific incident yesterday where some violent settlers went into a Palestinian a home and burnt a car and then wrote some graffiti using the names of the Bibas family as revenge, which is just so disgusting in a number of ways. This is a daily occurrence. It's being done in the name of the State of Israel and in our name. And we need to take a stand against it, because it's not right. It's not what we want to see from the State of Israel, and it undermines the two-state solution that we believe in. So I really think that this needs to be challenged and needs to be spoken about. And finally, I think there are changing attitudes within our Jewish community. We're seeing people who are becoming increasingly disillusioned, and this is largely as a result of a seeming uncritical stance towards current Israeli policy. We need to adapt to changing circumstances, especially recognizing the changing attitudes of younger people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Josh, Janvier, and then Jay. So Josh Aronson, again, the floor is yours.
Thank you. As the Deputy for the Zionist Federation UK, I thank you for this discussion. This is a discussion that is important for Zionism around the world. I recently gave a lecture in Salford University, and I spoke about my activism in Zionist Federation and in Meret's party. And someone asked, how could you fight for Palestinian? You're Zionist. And that, I think, is the problem. People don't understand the education that you can be a Zionist and also fight for a two-state solution. I also next week will be traveling to Israel for the Voice of the People conference with President Herzog. And that is one of the things that will be discussed. And I invite any members of the board to contribute towards the discussion. We have a survey that was sent out in order to bring a better place and a better country and equality for all its citizens. Herzl wanted himself to state solution, and we are committed to that.
Thank you very much, Josh. I need to close the list. I was hoping it would close at Ruth. I'm going to try and squeeze 2 more in, but I can't promise you, James and Debbie, that I will do it, but I will do my best. So I've got Janvier, Jay, and then Denise. Janvier, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Janvier Palmer, Deputy for Bromley Reform Synagogue. My comment is inspired mostly by the language that is used by the board when it is discussing the two-state solution. As a British organisation, I think we have to be careful not to echo the British Empire of past eras, suggesting that we know how to solve issues overseas or what is in the best interest of others. I have family members who are instinctively wary of anything British, and I know that there are Arabs as well who feel similarly about perfidious Albion, as the phrase is. My Zionism is about the right of Jews to self-determination. And similarly, I believe that any Palestinian state must be created with the right of Palestinians to self-determination. And therefore, when we are discussing or commenting on the future of Gaza or Palestine, I ask that we emphasize that it must come with the consent of the people on the ground, because otherwise the statements that the board statements can come across as paternalistic or colonial in their nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janvier. So I've got Jay, then Denise, then Paul. Jay Schlesinger, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Jay Schlesinger. I am the Under 35 Observer for Kol Nefesh Masorti Synagogue, and this is my first speech this triennium. I'm sorry to say this, but the two-state framework has been proven unworkable. I'm a proud Zionist and have lived in Israel during the most recent wars with Hamas. I cannot help but keep reminding myself that a path to peace requires credible partners on both sides of the conflict. However, the Palestinian leadership has rejected multiple peace deals, and terrorist organizations like Hamas remain committed to Israel's destruction, not coexistence. Blanket support for a two-state approach oversimplifies a deeply complex issue and undermines Israel's right to determine its own future. Instead, I believe we must stand for Israel's security, sovereignty, and the pursuit of realistic paths to peace. Our role is to represent British Jewry in all its diversity, not impose policies that ignore the realities on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Denise, and then Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to talk about something that nobody else has talked about, which is the psychological impact of the continual the continual media output and the continual imagery, and its effect on the confidence of the diaspora community, individual deputies, and indeed the Jewish community. And I think that the board, in order to assist in the clear bond that we have with Israel, needs to look at resilience training and also help the community not be fearful, for example, if they're going for medical treatment, to declare that they're Jewish. With regard to the media, that's our key issue in terms of promoting peace and security in the Middle East. And I would also ask deputies, when they express a view that is anti the government or anti Netanyahu to be quite mindful if there are journalists on the call or media outlets that clearly have a narrative to undermine confidence and in the government.
I'm going to cut you off, Denise. I'm really sorry.
Respectful. Thank you.
Have to get everybody in here. Paul, and then Jeremy, and then Keith.
Hi, Paul Edlin, Glasgow Jewish Representative Council, part of the Jewish Council of Scotland. I think many people, nobody has mentioned so far Hamas's objectives. They are not to establish a Palestinian state and a two-state solution. They are unequivocally to destroy the state of Israel as a Jewish state as it stands. That is what the Israelis are up against. They are not looking, the Hamas people are voted in democratically by the Palestinians, and they are acting as their government and their proxy in this attempted elimination of the state of Israel. That is what they truly want. And the board in the past, when I was a vice president, used to have a rule in the constitution that they supported the democratically elected government of the state of Israel. At the moment, I don't think that rule applies. I accept that many Israelis and most of British Jewry, many in British Jewry, if not most, do not accept that, and that is not the point. The point is they are a democratically elected government, and we have to respect that, and because we are not living there in the huge brutality that Israelis are suffering. We have to remember that and allow the Israelis the room to seek out the solution they want and need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I've got Jeremy and then Keith, and I think then I'm near the end of the people who've been waiting for ages and ages and ages. So what I'm going to do with the others is prioritize you if you have not spoken. I hope you'll forgive me for doing that. I hope my good friend Owen will in particular. He may not, but I really want to hear as many different voices as I can. So Jeremy, thank you for your patience. Jeremy, then Keith, and then possibly Efrat.
Thank you. A few people have, thank you very much. A few people have alluded quite rightly to the fact that there's been a historic and seismic shift in the region in the last 16 months. And I think that has to actually affect our conversation too. I'll give you an anecdote if I may. I was in Israel last year in April and met with what I would describe as a very liberal Zionist professor, kind of person who would be very, very at home with Yesh Atid, very at home with criticizing the Netanyahu government and criticizing the far right in Israel. And he said, if you walked in Tel Aviv and you advocated for two states, a Palestinian state, you would be laughed off the street and met with derision. And I had conversations like that with many, many voices. Now, I think that it's important that we understand where those people are coming from and why they're having the views that they do. And what we need to acknowledge is that we should have, without losing that commitment to two states, is to have a broader conversation that revolves around what I think is the key word, which is de-radicalization. That's something we're very good at talking about in respect of Israel. We condemn, as we rightly should, settler violence. We condemn the pyromaniacs in Israel's far right, the ministers, one of whom has resigned. We're very good at having that conversation, but we need to say very clearly that that applies to the Palestinian leadership and it applies to the Palestinian people as a whole. We need to ensure that the rejection of the two-state solution, which has happened 7 times in a row, that culture ends. We need to acknowledge that UNRWA has been a barrier to peace and can no longer play any role meaningfully in that region. The culture of incitement in the Palestinian media, on the Palestinian streets, in mosques and so on, again, that needs to be rooted out. And the West should condition aid and should condition support on that happening. So we are very good at applying that idea to Israel. And again, we rightly should, but it must be applied to both sides. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. So I've got Keith and then Efrat.
Hello, good morning. My name's Keith Appleby. I'm the deputy for St Albans United Synagogue. And I really want to say that I get very worried when people tell me that there's only one way to do something. I think we need to rethink our policy on the two-state solution. There's a lot of very intelligent people on the board, and I think we need to use a bit more thought and imagination. As far as Israel is concerned, there's really 2 points. There's the immediate situation and there's the long-term situation, and they're not the same. We have to get through the current situation before we can even look at the future. And as far as the Arabs are concerned, they're not talking about a two-state solution at all. Most of the Arabs and the Palestinians are talking about the destruction of Israel and not a two-state solution alongside Israel. And finally, I would say, as a Premier League Jewish organization, I think we should be supporting Israel without reservation. They're my thoughts, and I will finish there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. I've got Efrat, and then I'm going to take Mary Rainier Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to see everybody here, and I'll make it super quick. I would like to talk about the reality as a practitioner in the foreign policy world. And first of all, I'd like to commend Phil, President Phil, Adrian, honorary officers and staff for dealing with the subtleties of the context that we are dealing with now, for having nuanced proclamations representing the board. And this is something that my constituency has particularly appreciated. So I represent the SNP Sephardi community, where a vast majority of our congregants are from the Middle East. My family is from Iran and Syria, and so we are very, very familiar with the terrain in which we have to navigate here. And so I would like to commend Phil and Adrian for enabling us in the international vision to deal with the main danger here to our people, which is Iran. Iran poses the greatest danger, not only to Israel, but for us as the Jewish community in the UK. And so I've been working with my colleagues, Edwin Shuker and Daniel J. Levy, as well as with Adrian and others, to addressing this danger within the context of the Abraham Accords. I will also be representing us at President Herzog's forum, and commend Phil for working with us on the Drumlanrig Accords, which will further the city of Jews in the UK. So that's a quick run through.
Thank you very much, Efrat. Mary Rainier Lee, and then Debbie Barnett.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Want to keep it short. Two-state solution, of course, is the answer, but you have to have two sides to work on that. And the current response of the Arabs, as you've heard, is always to refuse anything which isn't 100% destruction of Israel. And I think at the end of the day, that is what you have to work for, to make Arabs understand, and the education of their children, no longer to treat Jews as the enemy and have to be destroyed, but as to people that they can live alongside. And until you've done that, the two-state solution has no real meaning. So what we really need to do is to support Israel, to support the future of Arabs in terms of what they are taught in the schools. As you know, they're not taught all the right things. They are taught about the evil of Jews and how they must be destroyed. So yes, the two-state solution is the end of what we're looking for, but it's not the beginning and now. There are other things that we need to do in order to succeed. And that's all I'm going to say today. Thank you.
Thank you for your brevity, Mary. Really appreciate everybody's effort here. I'm going to take Debbie and then Lawrence Jacobson.
Debbie Barnett, St Albans, Missouri. First of all, as a point of information, the Hamas government was elected, I think, in 2008. There have not been democratic elections in Gaza since, so it is difficult to know how representative they would be of the current population. Secondly, I would say we've talked about a two-state solution. An unequal solution is no solution, is unenforceable. We cannot have Israel without having a Palestinian state. The time for imagining that has long since gone. And finally, I would like to quote from Pirkei Avot. We've heard mention of Weizmann, of Herzl, and indeed Ben Gurion. And I would like to bring into the conversation Hillel, who said, "If I am not for myself, who is for me? If I'm for myself alone, then what am I?" We cannot advocate for Israel without advocating for the Palestinian people, by whom I do not mean Hamas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you all really seem to be on my side so that we can hear from everybody. So I'm going to hear from Lawrence and then, if we can, from Ruth Hart, if you all be as concise as our last two speakers. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Lawrence Jacobson, Wimbledon and District Synagogue. Now, if the concept of a two-state solution is to move from being a figment of one's imagination to perhaps a more pragmatic level, it seems to me that compliance with the following propositions should be key. First of all, unconditional recognition of the right of two states to exist side by side within defined borders. Secondly, guarantees of mutual security by both states. Thirdly, there should be no general rights of way to Palestinians in the Palestinian state over, across, or indeed under the land of the State of Israel to join Gaza with the West Bank. Now, fourthly, instead, Egypt and Jordan should cede a buffer zone along their respective borders with Israel to be used as a right of way to joining the two parcels of Palestinian land. And finally, if no agreement can be reached between the parties as to the ownership of East Jerusalem, then that part of the city should be governed by neither state, but fall under international trusteeship, as I think was originally envisaged in the suggested partition of Palestine and Israel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. So Ruth, James, and then I will try and take you, Michael, if everybody can be nice and short.
Good afternoon, Ruth Hart, Bournemouth Reformed Synagogue. If we have no dogma concerning the eventual borders of Israel or a Palestinian state, why are we still advocating a two-state solution? And I think Adrian mentioned a possible vacuum in Gaza when I last asked about this, but that already existed and Hamas filled it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. That's a model of brevity, but thank you. So James and then Michael.
Karen, sorry, it's Michael Weger here. If we carry on now, we're going to go over the 1240 that we promised deputies. So just think we need to clarify that situation.
Okay. I have been looking at people's faces to see if they're bored stiff, and I have seen that everybody is really, really focused, and it was that made me think, but you're right. I do need to can we go beyond? Are people okay with that? It's just that we have literally a handful of speakers now. Are people saying that's okay? My screen won't show me people beyond the speakers, so let me move. People say that's okay? No, it's very mixed. I'm going to
I think we have to bring it to an end now. I'm really sorry, everybody, but we made promises to people, and people make plans based on what we tell them. So I think going beyond 12:45 at the very latest is just inappropriate.
All right, so I'll take the two that I've said that I'll take, and then that's the end. Apologies to everybody. So that was James and then Michael, I think.
Thank you. A two-state solution is the only viable solution to the crisis, to the conflict. We cannot carry on with this cycle of killing, death, destruction. There's fighting the conflict feeds hatred of its Jews and Israel across the world, and we must put a stop to this. A two-state solution is the only way of bringing peace and prosperity and preventing endless conflict. If Israel must not continue its settlements, or a two-state solution will not be viable. A one-state solution is increasingly being suggested amongst academia, where Palestinians will form a majority, and that would almost certainly end in disaster for all. And the main argument behind that is that settlements are making a two-state solution unviable. So we must put pressure on Israel to stop the settlements and keep a two-state
James,
solution.
I'm going to stop you there because I think you've made your main point there. Michael.
Thank you very much for involving me again. I just want to say that I'm very concerned that realpolitik does not seem to be that much of the discussion we've had this morning. been involved with my cousin at Kibbutz Hamarpil, which is a very left-wing kibbutz, supporters of Meretz, and they would not see how on earth a two-state solution can possibly be there. The people that were coming into Israel, which we can see enabled them to have a better life. I don't see any future in that, and I see no future as long as the textbooks within the territories continue to talk only about one-state solution, the Palestinian solution. There has to be so much change on the other side for there to be any possibility of a two-state solution taking place. That's what I am very concerned about, that there has to be much more there. And this is particularly seen by the fact that within the Jordan and with Egypt and other states within the Middle East, they will not accept any of the Palestinians. So we have to, whatever we're doing, has to be a real politique, and not our wishes sitting here in this country and not taking into account what Israel themselves want.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you to all of you, and my apologies to the handful of speakers who I was not able to take. Phil, I'm going to ask you to wrap up this element of the discussion so that we can move to our new speakers program.
Thank you so much, friends. Look, that was an incredibly quality discussion. I want to thank everybody for their interventions. As we know, we are a diverse group and we embrace that diversity. And I often say it's okay to disagree, L'Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven. It's even better to agree, L'Shem Shamayim. And we heard a lot of agreement on many, many key points today. First of all, I think we are united in our resolve to get the hostages out. I think that is across the community a top priority for us. Second of all, the pushback against Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah and its proxies. We need to be absolutely clear-sighted on the threats that Israel and indeed the region and indeed ourselves face from these groups. And third of all, the desire for peace, the expansion of the Abraham Accords and that elusive two-state solution. And we had a lot of strong endorsement for the two-state solution today, not universal, but very strong. And that, I think, reflects the community as a whole. We've seen a change in the last 15 years from 77% of the community supporting the two-state solution to 54% now. And I think that tells an interesting story. On the one hand, there's been a fall in that support because of the realities, the Palestinian rejectionism, the terrorism that we've seen. But at the same time, it still maintains majority support because it is, as it stands, the only show in town. And I think that's why it continues to command that majority support and indeed the support of the deputies we've seen. But we've got to note that diversity of opinion. I think it's really important, but we continue to support a two-state solution and drive towards that eventual peace. I think, look at other things within the domestic scene within Israel. We want to see Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. We want it as a state for all its citizens, including its Arab citizens. And of course, we want a Jewish state that is open to all forms of Judaism and not retrenching and excluding different kinds of Jews from it. You've set us a very interesting challenge in your comments today. You want us to be robust and you want us to be balanced. And as the HAs, we will try and take those challenges away with us all the time when we make our statements. It was really helpful in terms of that framing. We won't always get it right, but you can be assured that we will always be trying to get it right. And it's discussions like today that help us shape those views and understand where you're at. So despite there being 2 Jews and 3 opinions, we've had a brilliant discussion today. Thank you for it. And it really helps us in our work.
Great. Thank you, Phil. And again, thanks to everybody who contributed to that really important discussion. We now have our new speakers program, which is a great way of us to get to know who's joined us and really get a sense of where they're coming from. So we've got Lauren, Eddie, Sapir, and Rebecca, and I'm going to take Lauren first. So Lauren Keelis, the floor is yours. It's doing my head in that you're a new face, but you know, it's lovely to welcome you here as a deputy. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So Lauren Kalis, Deputy for Liberal Judaism. After 506 extremely horrific and difficult days, this week has managed to bring us all to new lows of heartbreak and despair. At this time where we feel so hurt, let down, ignored and misunderstood, the natural thing would be for us to turn inwards and ignore or dismiss everything happening outside of our community. We must find the inner strength to stay strong and carry on our important interfaith and political advocacy work. Although this is my maiden speech at a plenary, I first joined as a deputy in 2018 and joined the board staff team as a community manager in 2021, working with deputies and their communities right across the country. Now I work at the Anne Frank Trust UK. We educate young people from across the country about the Holocaust and empower them to tackle anti-Semitism and all forms of prejudice. Our latest impact data shows that 88.7% of the young people we work with make progress in their attitudes towards people different to themselves, with the greatest progress in attitudes happening towards Jewish people. I am on the governing board of the World Union of Progressive Judaism, representing 1.8 million Jews across the world. I'm also part of the World Jewish Congress Diplomatic Corps, a worldwide network of young Jewish leaders using diplomacy to represent and safeguard the Jewish people. I am the founder of Swipe Left on Hate, the digital campaign to highlight the real-world impact of online hate targeted towards Jews, Muslims, and refugees. At the Board of Deputies this triennium, I am pleased to have been appointed to the Constitution Committee as a gender equality champion with Deputy Claire Morland and elected as the Vice Chair of the Under 35 Assembly. I look forward to working with you all to campaign for the release of the hostages and to end this war, building genuine alliances to create peace and firmly calling out anyone who tries anything to undermine this. We must never forget the people of Ukraine and how desperately they need to live free from Putin's destructive war. We must continue to be a friend to all refugees who have fled persecution. And we must work together to ensure this triennium, the Board of Deputies really starts looking like our Jewish community, that we hear and understand concerns from right across the community and work to ensure Jewish life for all here in the UK goes from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We're lucky to have you, and it's great to have you with us in this new capacity. Thank you. Eddie Corsten, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Let me start with a little background on myself. Edmund Corsten, known as Eddie. I am a member and the deputy for Cardiff Reform Synagogue. As well as my board role, I'm currently a member of the Synagogue Executive, a card-holding member of CST, and the CRS representative for South Wales Jewish Rep Council. In addition to the roles within Cardiff Reform Synagogue, I am a member of the South Wales Police Independent Advisory Group. The role of the group is to comment on the force's procedures and processes.
Eddie, I'm going to interrupt you because your camera is placed in such a space that people cannot see your mouth, which makes it a little easier for some of our...
Sorry about that. How's that?
That's so much better. That's quite excellent.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
It's my laptop has...
No, you're on the clock. Go ahead.
Apologies. Right. So let me go back to the beginning of this bit. In addition to my role with Cardiff Jewish Community, I am a member of the South Wales Police Independent Advisory Group. The role of the group is to comment on their processes and procedures and provide input to when they address items with the Cardiff community, such as wrongful arrest, imprisonment of the board of the Bay 3, which was a miscarriage of justice as a result of a murder of a young lady in the Cardiff Bay, and policing of demonstrations supporting Gaza over the last 15 months. With my CST training, I am security officer for CRS and support the South Wales CST lead with cross-community issues. My biggest achievement with the Rep Council is to the school visits we do with the Board of Deputies Excellent Jewish Life exhibition pop-ups. Why did I decide to stand for election for the Board of Deputies? I believe it's very important for every community to have a voice and input to the role of Jews and how they are represented in the UK. In addition, speaking on a number of times with my predecessor, Stanley Soffer, I felt it's important that Cardiff Reform community are aware what the BOD can do for South Wales The only way I can try to ensure that both of these activities is to be involved. And I am currently a member of the Regional Assembly of Zoom group. At this point, I'd like to thank the board, and in particular Vicky Liska, for her involvement with myself and my Hevra Kadisha secretary on addressing a number of concerns we have with Cardiff communities, Cardiff cemetery management and their burial area. And in closing, I hope I can make a positive input to the Board of Deputies.
Thank you so much, Eddie. You obviously bring so much to the board. It's great to have you with us. Sapir Tal, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, my name's Sapir Tal and I'm the Under 35 Observer for Maidenhead Synagogue. I'm a HR professional and I was born in Israel, grew up in Maidenhead, and my family is originally from the Bnei Israel, which is one of the Jewish communities in India. I grew up in the Maidenhead Synagogue, which has accomplished incredible achievements, building its membership to being one of the largest non-metropolitan synagogues in the UK, building community ties into multi-faith groups, having regular school visits, inviting notable people such as Rami Sherman, Maureen Lipman, and for those long-term Reading football fans, Sir John Majeski, hosting racial inclusivity talks, anti-Semitism, 7th of October, and I can go on and on and on. My passion for joining the Board of Deputies was simply to learn, advocate for my people, and tackle misinformation. Growing up, like many others, I was the only Jewish person of colour or Israeli at school, university, so navigating this identity and belonging was a whole different ballgame. So recognising my background as a strength rather than an indifference powers me to advocate for my community and for others. Both in my HR career and as an observer, my keen interests are intersectionality, multi-faith and employee rights, continuing the legacy of my community. I've joined many divisions and subgroups and also joined the British Indian and Jewish Association. And here are just some of my ideas, but also concerns. I'd really love to develop or strengthen awareness of different Jewish cultures around the world, developing education that challenges and dismantles stereotypes in a crucial but fostering inclusivity and promoting diversity across all communities. I feel being outside of metropolitan cities are sometimes overlooked, even if we equally we go through difficult issues such as Jewish students being physically attacked at schools and men even shouting anti-Semitic things outside of our gates. I think having these WhatsApp groups and communication is even more vital than normally for outside communities, even having guidance for these aspects, but also how to utilize them. It's a great way to support each other, but also to highlight successes. And whilst we talk about media reporting, there's also another element of reporting, which is employer bodies. They do not represent or report on key anti-Semitic issues, especially when it's a heightened issue in comparison with other religious issues as well. And I know that it's already been mentioned, but training for events such as Parliamentary Advocacy Day. Whilst I thrive on learning new skills, Jack Baldwin really helped me with understanding basic diplomacy skills, and that was really vital to me talking to my MP. And lastly, I'd like to just thank you all for those who have gotten to know and those who are yet to meet. And a big thank you to Lee Dawkins, Deputy for our synagogue, being a mentor and an advocacy for all of his work.
Thank you so much, Sapir. It was a great pleasure for me to meet you at the board parliamentary event a couple of weeks back, and we look forward to your contributions in this space in the future. And last but not least, the floor is yours, Rebecca.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi. Okay. So shalom, chavarim v'chavarot. My name is Rebecca Singerman Knight. I'm deputy and co-chair of Kingston Liberal Synagogue, and I am just going to lost what I was going to say. So please bear with me. Okay. So I'm Rebecca, and I am a Zionist. And I am proud to call myself a Zionist. It's the first word on the bio of my social media accounts. But what does that mean to me? Well, I'm a progressive Zionist. And in being so, I'm very involved with two progressive Zionist organizations, which are Artseinu, and the World Union for Progressive Judaism, the WUPJ. In this brief talk, I just want to share with you what being a progressive Zionist means to me under three main headings, which are advocating for progressive Jewish values, supporting the reform movement in Israel, and contributing to the vision of Israel as a Jewish and a democratic state. Progressive Zionism works to bring progressive Judaism to Israeli society, informed by values such as gender equality, pluralism, security, pursuit of peace and social justice for all, regardless of religion, race, or ethnicity. It also means a wide definition of Jewish identity, but importantly, a definition that firmly believes that Jewish identity is intertwined with the reality of the State of Israel. Progressive Zionists, such as myself, support and collaborate with the Israeli Movement for Progressive Judaism and other organizations in Israel which advocate for the same values. Through our representation in the World Zionist Organization, we have real influence in Israel's national institutions where we can advocate for our values. And so the upcoming elections to the World Zionist Congress later this year are vital in ensuring that our influence can continue in this realm. Hence my involvement in Artsenu. However, putting all this aside, we don't really need to think about redefining or reinventing progressive Zionism. We can just go back to Israel's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, because it was all there right at the beginning. The State of Israel will promote the development of the country for all its inhabitants, will be based on principles of liberty, justice, and peace as conceived by the prophets of Israel, will uphold the full social and political equality of all its citizens without distinction of religion, race, or sex. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Israel is currently facing a pretty unprecedented crisis. So I don't want to underplay the importance of the value of security, which I have outlined above, and probably at this time is one of the most pressing values. Because without security, we cannot even hope to implement our vision and our values. However, without these underpinning vision and values of Israel as a Jewish and a democratic state, then what are we fighting for? I'm Israel High.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And you two clearly bring much to the board. It's great to have you with us. Deputies, before I hand over to Phil to close the meeting, I want to thank you all for staying on focus, for being so disciplined, and for enabling us to bring you in only 2 minutes after the 15 extra minutes that you granted me. So thank you all very much for that. Phil, the floor is yours to close the meeting.
And a huge thank you to you, Karen, for as ever drawing us through with great energy and positivity. Thank you very much for that. And thank you to all deputies. It's been a really great meeting. I was delighted that we voted through NEMCOM, the Focus Forum. Some of you all have seen that this week I met with Norwood, who are in the process of applying. And this is really important because later this year, we're going to be launching our Commission on Disability Inclusion in the Jewish Community, which I think will be a really exciting move forward. I know a number of deputies have been really excited about this. Owen Power, I know, a long-standing champion for this area. We're going to get to it and we're going to start working on it very soon. And I'm really excited to have more members who will be able to work with us on that area. In the coming weeks before we next meet, I'll be visiting Nea Israel and Pinner United, and I'm really grateful to the deputies who organise hosting us. We're also going to be pushing forward on the Optimistic Alliance and, of course, continuing our campaign until every last hostage is home. A few notices about the upcoming meetings, because there's some really exciting and important stuff coming up. In the March meeting, we're going to be, we had the International Division today and Security, Resilience and Cohesion last time. We're moving to the Community and Education Division. And we're going to be discussing the process by which we're looking to bring schools onto the Board of Deputies. We're in the process of drawing up a resolution. The resolution will probably come in May, but actually we're going to be starting to talk about what that looks like, how we bring schools into the piece next time. And I think that's going to be a really exciting change as we look to build that leadership pipeline from young people, sixth formers to youth movements to UJS to young professional organisations. In May, we are going to be hosting, it'll be an Israeli theme, a senior Israeli diplomat will be joining us. And there's an opportunity, friends, because as we've had in the meetings in person, we like to have a Kiddush. The final HO, Adrian is going to be hosting and sponsoring the Kiddush in March. We'll be looking for deputies who may wish to sponsor the Kiddushes going forward in May, and perhaps the falafel-themed Israeli-style slap-up lunch is the way to go. So we'll write to you with information about what that looks like and relevant costs and so on, if anyone wants to step forward for that. In July, and this is where I'm very excited, you'll have seen in your papers, the eagle-eyed among you, the first information about the plenary in Brighton on the 4th to 6th of July. Now, it is it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be a wonderful weekend. See the incredible new centre, the wonderful diversity of communities that are in Brighton, the exciting Jewish heritage, and some really delicious food. I think we're going to have the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, happens to be the local MP, Peter Kyle, will be addressing us as well. One not to miss. So please do let us know if you're interested. It is not too early to start booking accommodation, cancelable if you can, because I think accommodation will begin to sell out. We've got a few recommendations for the options there. But please do all try and join us. Partners, families, welcome. It'd be really great to have a really great turnout for that, and it will be brilliant. So with that, I just say the following things. And I say often, the last 16 months have been incredibly difficult for us as a community, as a board, as a Jewish people. But we, as the Jewish people, have resilience in our DNA, and our absolute determination in the board is that we will come back stronger. And with that, I leave you with Andrew Day's Rise Up, so that we will together campaign, lead forward, and continue to lead as we have. Thank you very much, Deputies, and see you next time.